Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Community Conservation, a series that presents projects, ideas, and people surrounding conservation in Oregon. I'm your host, Sarah Armstrong, the marketing manager at the Oregon Wildlife Foundation. And for those of you who are new with the foundation, we're an organization that's dedicated to funding wildlife and habitat conservation work throughout Oregon since 1981. If you want to support the conservation work that we do and this free educational series, go ahead and fill out the form below at any time. This series would not be possible without the collaboration of our partners, presenters, and of course, you, our supporters. If you have questions for our speakers, just type them in the chat and they'll get to it. In addition to our presenters today, I have OWF Development Manager, Clay Augustine, joining the discussion. Clay, thanks for joining the panel.
Hi, Sarah, thanks. Glad to be here. Happy Earth Day, everybody.
Yes, in celebration of Earth Day this month, we'll actually be talking about Portland's natural areas and the role that they play in our communities. Our speakers will be telling the story of a group of neighbors who decided to take action towards restoring a nature corridor above the Willamette River in the shadow of the St. John's Bridge. Welcome Laura Guderyahn, an ecologist with Portland Parks and Recreation, and Barbara Quinn, board president with the Friends of Baltimore Woods. Thanks for being here. Laura, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your background?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm an ecologist with Portland Parks and Recreation. I've been working for Portland Parks for about 6 years, and my job is to basically make natural areas in the city as healthy as possible for the wildlife and the plants, and also for the people that visit them.
Right on. And Barbara, would you like to tell us a little bit about your role with the group?
Absolutely. Well, actually, thank you very much, first of all, Sarah and Calais. I actually started with a group about 15 years ago when our group was an idea that the neighbors were talking about. And basically it was a group of neighbors gathered around a kitchen table talking about what we would like to see happen with our wooded area. Basically it's a corridor, and we that's how I got started with my group, Friends of Baltimore Woods.
Nice. I'm so excited to hear about it. Laura, why don't you set the scene for us by explaining what the role of natural areas are?
Sure. So I'm going to share my screen so you can see a couple images. So this is just a very general image of the Portland Parks and Recreation system. So the way I like to describe it is we have two different types of parks. We have natural areas, and then we have developed parks. And developed parks are the ones that have playgrounds and soccer fields and picnic tables. And the natural areas are ones that are set aside more specifically for wildlife habitat and passive recreation, like hiking, bird watching, photography, that sort of thing. If you look at this map, you can see that we have a lot of parks spread really throughout the entirety of the city with a couple of really big anchor pieces. So for example, we have Forest Park over here in the northwest, we have Powell Butte in the southeast, we have Smith and Bybee, and then just up here by St. John's Bridge, we have Cathedral Park and the Baltimore Woods natural area that we're gonna be talking about today. There we go. So this is our St. John's Bridge, and the Baltimore Woods Connectivity Corridor is basically the northernmost point of a corridor that stretches many miles all the way down to Oaks Bottom and Ross Island. And it's part of a larger bluff system that's perched up above the Willamette River. That's a really special habitat type. It's an oak savanna and a little bit of remnant prairie as well, which is a pretty rare habitat to be found in the city. And it kind of culminates up at the Baltimore Woods natural area site just north of the St. John's Bridge. It's about 30 acres, the Baltimore Woods section of it between the St. John Bridge and Pier Park. And about 75% of it is owned currently by the city or is managed by the city. And it really provides an anchor habitat for plants and animals that are living along that whole strip along the Willamette River. It's kind of a nice chunk of habitat, a nice acreage for wildlife to be able to survive in. It's also the home of a future regional trail that we hope will be part of that corridor that will go right through some of that habitat and along the streets. This will connect the North Portland neighborhood down to the East Bank Esplanade and some of the rest of the city, and hopefully allow a lot more people to enjoy this habitat chunk. And then it's an urban natural area, right? So we have this is the Baltimore Woods corridor kind of extending down and up through here, but it's surrounded by industry and neighborhoods. And so it's a really unique and complex and dynamic place that's constantly changing and that has some really fun and unique challenges. But most importantly, there's so many people around it that love it that we're able to form some great partnerships. As I mentioned, the oak savanna is a very important habitat type. Across the state of Oregon, only a fraction of our oak are left, and we have only one native oak species, the Oregon white oak. The Oregon white oak habitat is a very unique place with a really nice, big, tall canopy, and then open understory, and usually a lot of prairie grasses, herbs underneath. And one of the cool things about the oak is that there are specific species that can only live in oak habitat. So if we were to lose that oak, we would actually lose all of these species as well. So in the upper left corner there, we have the western gray squirrel. So right now we have a number of different squirrel species like the fox and the eastern gray squirrel that are actually not native to the area and are pushing out the western gray squirrel. So it's actually really important to keep good habitat for the western gray. The bottom left is an acorn woodpecker. So we have a number of species of woodpecker, but the acorn is an obligate for oak. So it requires oak to be able to survive and be healthy. In the middle top, that's an example of an oak that's turned into a den. So it actually has a really beautiful cavity inside of it that wildlife like the woodpecker and the western gray squirrel can use. And then down in the bottom middle, we have a madrone. So madrone is a tree that's often found with oak, and it's also another one of our very rare species that we rarely have. And we do have quite a few of them in the Baltimore Woods Natural Area that we're trying to preserve. And then up in the upper right corner, we have the white-breasted nuthatch, which is a species of bird that is also obligate. It requires oak to be able to survive. And then in the bottom right, we have our native camas species, which is often found in the understory. And it's also a first food and very important to indigenous culture. So those are some of the species that are really important to this habitat and to why Baltimore Woods Natural Area receives quite a bit of attention from the neighborhood because of how special it is. So we've been partnering with Friends of Baltimore Woods as well as a number of other organizations to conduct restoration to try to make sure that that habitat stays healthy and also a place for people to come and visit.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that I noticed when I visited the site. It was maybe a month ago and I had not been yet. And I was visiting the site and noticed how many madrones there were. And I was super stoked to see them because I don't get to see them a lot. I live in Portland as well, and I don't see them where I live a whole lot. But I was really excited to see them. They're beautiful and they're big up there too. So I'm glad that you guys are taking on this work. Let's see. All right, well, Clay, do you have any questions that you wanted to add to this? Whoops, you're on mute.
Sorry.
It happens all the time.
I was really thrilled that I had a chance to go out there recently. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's just a really special place. And I really appreciate Barbara and Laura's work that's gone into it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to see how many partnerships that you guys have too for this project. Seems like a lot of collaboration. Do you have anybody else, Laura, on Portland Parks and Rec that help you with this or that are on your team maybe doing this, other ecologists?
We do. We actually partner with one of our other bureaus, environmental services. They bring other skills to the table that we're able to pair up with. And so they have a lot more experience with land acquisition and ability to acquire properties. So often BES, the Bureau of Environmental Services, will purchase properties. They'll do the first couple of years of restoration and then turn it over to parks for long-term management. So we have a really great relationship with BES and we work very closely with them on this project.
Oh, very cool. That's awesome. Well, Barbara, I know that you also have a presentation and you're going to dig a little bit deeper into the group Friends of Baltimore Woods, who is a recent fiscally sponsored project of the Oregon Wildlife Foundation. So we're thrilled to have this introduction into your project and have people really get to know you.
Okay. Well, do we want to just go through the slides or how do we want to do that? Just,
Yeah, Laura, do you have that queued up for her?
Yep, I'm ready to go.
Great.
okay, well, why don't we go to the next slide then? This is basically an overview of our corridor. It's about 1.5 miles long and it's within the Cathedral Park neighborhood. The important thing to know about it, I think, from my standpoint, is that this is entirely a grassroots project amongst neighbors. And the original instigator of the project, his hope was that we could save a little bit of nature in our neighborhood for children, urban children in the schools to come and learn about trees and learn about birds. And so when we sat down and started organizing this project, we started looking at all the things that would help us sell it to our agency partners. And one of the things that we noted was that there was connectivity. There was connectivity with the Willamette Greenway, with the parks between Cathedral Park and Pier Park, and there was connectivity with the Willamette Bluff. So although originally we were only talking about maybe 5 blocks of woodland that we wanted to preserve, we realized that there was a lot more to it. There's 1.5 miles actually, and around 30 acres. And it was noted in the North Reach Willamette Plan as an oak habitat. So with all that information, we started going to our agency friends, and we are so happy to work with Parks. Parks has been a fantastic partner on this project for information, for support, everything. Parks and BES and Metro and so many other partners we have. But we really appreciate Laura and all the help she gives us. This happens to be a shot of what we call the 10-acre woods, but it's actually about 8 acres. And it's at the very northernmost end of the bluff. In fact, it's where the bluff curves and more or less kind of ends. And this is one spot that we have not acquired yet, but we're very interested in acquiring it. And Parks is actually working on acquiring it for this project. So 8 acres of secret woodland in an urban area. It's going to be so fun for people to discover this. Right now, it's cut off from everybody. It's in a privately owned industrial lot, and people cannot go in there, but it's going to be a wonderful gift when we get that acquired.
I was going to say, I mean, it looks like you're probably going to get to this, but when you were talking about children being able to use the land, and that was, a primary purpose originally, what do you have a specific group in mind of children that you were like, this is a school close by, or did you just want it for future generations?
No, we had a school in mind. This was totally a neighborhood project. We had a school teacher in the neighborhood, and she worked at James John, and she brought her kids down there, down to the natural area, and they ended up making like little artworks. They collected items and they made artwork with it. And we were thrilled. This is totally what we want. Our neighborhood, St. John's, has become quite urbanized, and it's going to become a lot more urbanized in the future. And we wanted a place for the kids in the neighborhood to come in and just enjoy a little bit of trees. And there's a lot of birds in this particular corridor, and find acorns and see little furry critters, like rabbits and things like that. So we were kind of specific to James John School, but we're also working to some degree with Sitten, and we had a green team from James John that we were working closely with and doing tours with. And we have a preschool. We have a preschool that comes down and spends one day a week in the meadow. And the kids play outside all day. It's wonderful. It's exactly what we wanted.
Wow, that's so special.
I'm really happy. So happy about that. So this particular slide was the very first work party that we had in Baltimore Woods. And you'll see behind the folks, there's a pretty barren hillside. And that is because there was a fire on that hillside. And it pretty much cleared out all the blackberry for us. It was a very scary event, but it did clear out the blackberry for us. And we had quite a bit of blackberry. We had like 8 or 9 foot tall blackberry all through there. So that was kind of a scary thing, but also kind of a good thing. So we still have some of our trees actually survive that. And this is actually us taking our neighbors and residents for a tour. Because the area, the corridor is a little bit hard to find. It's a thin woodland, at least until it gets to the meadows. And we're trying to, we do a lot of tours to familiarize people with the project. And it's really fun actually too.
How can people join you for the tours? Is there some way to maybe sign up online, or they just show up certain days?
No, we actually schedule the tours. We don't have one listed yet because it's a little bit early in the season, but I imagine at the beginning of summer, we probably will start doing tours again, like once a month or so. And so if people want to go to the website, they'll probably be able to see those events when they pop up.
Oh, cool. And you just do tours of the project site and property site, or these tours of the historical area as well?
Well, we have a combo here. We got so many good things about this corridor. When you go for a walk on the corridor, you're going to learn a lot about history because we have Lewis and Clark water trail. Basically, our project follows the water trail of Lewis and Clark upon their discovery of the Willamette River. And we also have the very first land claim in St. John's is adjacent to our project. And our founding father, James John, his homestead was basically part of our project as well. So there's a lot of history in this corridor. So people get to learn a little bit about native oak and the importance of native oak. They get to learn about connectivity. They get to learn about how many ecosystems are in the North Portland area, because although we do have the native oak system, once this trail comes in, they're going to be going through maybe 4 or 5 different kinds of ecosystems, which is pretty cool. But this particular one, people don't know too much about the oak system because we have so little of it left. So we, like Laura was talking about, we talk about the animals and the vertical habitat that oak provide. And yeah, we just have fun. We tell all about the various stories that and things that come up with our project, the reasons why it's so much fun for us.
There's also
a very, very rich environment
there as well. The indigenous tribes used to gather along the shores of the Willamette River for trading purposes, as well as the Columbia Slough, which is just north. So this site is unique in addition to the habitat value, in that it's kind of at the confluence really where the Columbia Slough, the Columbia River, and the Willamette kind of all meet. And so it's also a really diverse place for human history and folks gathering as well. So there's significant indigenous history there as well.
Thank you. That's a really important point as well. Yeah. So we can go to the next slide. This is a native plant that we planted in what we call the upper woodland near one of our meadows. And it's an example of what we do. We do a lot of work parties where we put in native plants, take out invasives, plant natives, and then we put mulch around them to give them a good start. And that particular shrub, I think it's about 8 feet tall right now. So this is a few years back.
Wow. What are your work parties like? Can you describe them a little for me? I know Calais was recently at a work party as well. I don't know if it was similar.
She was. Yeah, she was. And she worked really hard. We have work parties throughout the winter, second Saturday, 9 to 12. And we're being really careful right now because of the pandemic to make sure that, we tell people to bring their own gloves. They can bring their own tools if they wish, but we do provide tools as well. And we have people socially distanced and also bring masks. But it's a really nice opportunity. Every second Tuesday, we choose a portion, a site within the Baltimore Woods corridor and kind of concentrate on removing invasives, planting natives, or some combination thereof. And sometimes we even do litter patrols as well. But we have a lot of fun. It's a really nice way, especially during this time, to get outside, join other people, have a sense of community, and do something really productive and get some fresh air, actually get out of the house. So that's every second Saturday throughout winter.
Can I just add that I did attend that last weekend, and it was really fun. It was a beautiful day. There were a lot of people there. Walked right up and Laura was there, and there were donuts and all the tools you needed. It was really, really great. And so much had been done already. Like everything was already cleared in the area that I was helping at. So we were just planting. And I think I planted a type of honeysuckle.
Cool.
Honeysuckle, right? Or snowberry. And then there was a huge old oak tree that had come down recently. And so we were planting new oak trees, like little baby oak trees. So that was really neat to see this cycle of life happening right there. It was like underneath the St. John's Bridge too. So it was just a really neat setting.
It's one of the things we talk about on our tours is the wonderful views this corridor is going to offer people. I mean, you're going to have views of the St. John's Bridge. You're going to have a wooded area on one side of the trail. You're going to go right through the meadow, and the views from the meadow are quite lovely as well. And you're going to be able to see Forest Park Hills and the river. And you're actually going to see quite a bit of industry as well. Some people find that really, really interesting. And so
you're really enticing people to come with the donuts and the good views and
we feed people. We provide coffee sometimes and chocolate and tea. Oh yeah, we like to put the full. Yeah, we like to take care of people.
Some bribery coming on. I like it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a party.
And actually, for people who don't know who Solve is, can you explain who Solve is?
Well, we partner with Solve quite a bit. We have a lot of partners on our work parties, but Solve has been a very, very helpful partner for us. And Solve actually does organizing of restoration work throughout the state, I believe. And we have them here in Portland, and people can sign up to come and work on a Baltimore Woods work party through the Solve site. And we get a lot of volunteers that way. Some of the volunteers are actually from North Portland, and they end up being friends of our project. But we also get people from all over the city that want to come out and see what's going on out here in North Portland and experience the Baltimore Woods project. So they've been a very helpful over the years. They've been provided us with many volunteers and a lot of support and plants. They've donated plants, a lot of support for restoration. We like Solve. So we can go to the next slide.
That might be the last slide we've got.
Oh, okay.
I have a follow-up question for you about your volunteers. I'm wondering what, if any, if there's a specific age makeup for your volunteers, or if maybe people of all kinds come, maybe families, anything specific?
We have all of the above. Actually, we take children, any children under 12, we would like them to have an adult supervisor with them. But people bring small children, and even the smallest children. We actually have a set of really tiny tools. And sometimes the kids just run around and they find little bugs and things like that and have fun with that. Now we're fine with that. But we have kids from, I think we've had kids from as young as 3 out there. And families are great. We love having families. Families come out all the time as a, a family project and do restoration, but we've had elders as well. I mean, I would pretty much put myself in that category, but we've had people a lot older than me as well, who
Wow.
who really like to get out and do something productive, and they have time on a Saturday morning, and yeah.
It's fun when you have so many different ages in a particular event, because you get to see the natural area through everybody's eyes, and everybody sees it in a little bit different way. So you can see it through, the kids' eyes running around, picking up bugs and looking under logs. And you can see from some of the older folks' eyes in that they know the history. They knew when that big oak tree used to still be there, and they knew it when it was, young and such. So it's really just great kind of social time to learn more about the natural area and how everybody else use it as well.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Laura. In fact, I noticed that there was a pretty young child, maybe like 7 years old, Saturday, and she was planting one of the new oak trees with her mom. And I thought that was so neat. I mean, fast forward, or, speed ahead in 50 years, she might be back there with her own child, showing them the oak tree she planted.
And that is exactly what we want. That's one of the reasons we really would like to get more youth involved in our project, and get them planting things and watching what happens with those plants and keeping an eye on things for us. We're really looking for a lot for new members. Yeah, amongst youth especially. So speaking of the old oak, the one that fell down this year, that was actually really hard for us to witness. That oak we thought was around 200 years old, judging by its girth. And we have wondered, for years, we've wondered why that particular oak was left to live when almost all the other ones were logged off about 100 years ago. And we were told that most of the oak on the Willamette Bluff system were logged off and slid down the hill to fuel the ferries that used to run on the river. So they were either taken out for that reason or they were cleared for farming. But that particular oak that came down this year was an absolutely beautiful, mature, semi-mature. I mean, oaks mature at 200 and they can live to be 600 or more. And we had that oak was such an important part of our tours, an important part of the corridor, because we would refer to it as, here's an example of a mature oak with its beautiful horizontal habit, giant limbs going in every direction, wonderful vertical habitat for creatures. There were lichens, there were ferns growing on it, there was moss growing on it. And we had this whole narrative story in our head about that it was on the James John property, and perhaps that's why it was left. So we don't know. And we thought maybe it was there when Lewis and Clark came up the river. And we would share that with people on our tours. So it was really hard when it came down. But then after we got over that it was our most mature oak that came down, we realized that there was another mature oak on the very other end of the property, on someone's private property, that was also around 200 years old, that we can also get acorns from it if we want to use local acorns to start more oaks. But also we also realized, just as Laura had said, that it's part of the life cycle, and Calais had said it's part of the life cycle. Trees come down and other trees come up. And so down trees are incredibly important to natural areas too. And they support certain types of animals, particular types of animals, and having that tree down and stay in place is an important part of this habitat. So when we looked at it that way, then we understood that, it's a part of life. And down trees have a role. Down trees have a role in natural areas.
You're right. And it's funny because when you're saying it like that, and it sounds kind of poetic, and there is this tree and it's symbolic and it meant so much to you and your community, but at the same time, you're right. The reality of it is the down timber is actually very good for the habitat there as well in its own way. So
Yeah.
well, I guess my last question for you is, what advice would you give any other, perhaps non-Portlanders who want to be good stewards of their community's natural habitat, like what you've done with your group? Do you have any other advice or maybe lessons learned that you would want to share with people?
Absolutely. Go for it. If you see a natural area that you think maybe you should, be conserved for your community, sit down with some of your neighbors and see if you have some interest in your neighborhood, and then look at all the things that it could offer. Does it have connectivity? Does it have a certain type of ecosystem that is of interest? What role does it play for you and your community? Is it just, a wonderful bit of your history even? And get together, get people excited about it, and then go find partners. Write down all the things that it can provide for you and your community. And maybe even it has regional importance for some reason. Get all that straight in your head, and then go talk to your partners, your agency partners. And one of the big things about Friends of Baltimore Woods is we just never gave up. We were that squeaky wheel, and we just kept at our partners and said, look at this. This is so good. Look at what we have here. We've got, recognized oak habitat and this and that. And we just never let them rest. And that's what you have to do. Sometimes that's what you have to do, is just keep at them, in a nice way. Just, oh, there they are again, kind of thing. Just keep at them. And if you have an idea and it's really caught hold like it did in our neighborhood, you can do it too. If we can do it, you can do it. So those kinds of ideas can inspire people in the neighborhood, but they can also inspire people amongst your agency partners. But you have to tell the story to them of why it's important. So I encourage you to do it.
I would add too, from the parks perspective, that it's very helpful to have an active community that wants to be involved and wants to steward a site. It allows us to put more time and attention into a site if we can maximize and really make use of existing helpers and volunteers. So having Barbara and the Friends of Baltimore Woods group has really allowed us to kind of uniquely maximize what's going on in that neighborhood and really to focus on this property. So any kind of engagement by the neighborhood is really welcomed.
And Clay, do you have any final thoughts?
I just want to say that I really, I think that the tenacity that this group has is super inspiring, and the amount of work that has been done in that area is huge, and there's still even more areas that are in the future for the group to work on. So I think it's definitely a place to watch for all of us, because it's like a real success story and a great partnership success story too. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for today. And Laura and Barbara, do you have a website or social media handles, anything that you'd like to plug for this project, for resources for our audience, anything like that?
I'll let you go first, Laura.
Portland Parks and Recreation has a very active stewardship program, which you can find on the Portland Parks and Recreation website. We also have Twitter and Facebook and other ways to stay in touch and involved in what parks is going on with. So I'd encourage you to do that. And yes, the stewardship coordinator, our stewardship calendar is up to date. So if you want to just get out and get to know a different natural area in a different part of the city, or even one in your own neighborhood, that's a great way to do it.
Well, great, yeah.
Yes, and I would encourage people to go to the Friends of Baltimore Woods website. I don't know it right off the top of my head, but if you type in friendsofbaltimorewoods.org, you will find it. And that way you can keep up with our events. Like I say, we do have an upcoming work party in April, and we have other upcoming things. Actually, we do what we call a golden hour throughout the summer and a little bit into the fall, and where we gather at dusk between 7 and 8 p.m. every Thursday evening. And we usually work on the meadow, take invasives out of the meadow. And it's lovely out there that time of day. And you get all the views of the bridge and views of the Forest Park Hills. And it's really quite lovely. So if you just want a little bit of outdoor activity, safely distanced from people, and yet you have a sense of community and productivity, take a look at that. Those usually start at the beginning of summer, usually in June.
Very cool. Awesome. And I'll go ahead and put those links in the chat here for everybody as well. Thank you again both for your time and sharing your experience with us. And thank you, Kalei, for being on the panel today. And thanks to everybody else who was able to join our broadcast this evening. As you may have noticed, we will be releasing community conservation episodes monthly with wide-ranging topics. A link to this discussion will be sent to your registered emails so that you can share with friends or even watch again. And of course, I want to mention our Watch for Wildlife license plate campaign here, which ensures safe passage for migrating wildlife. This plate, the proceeds for this plate do come back to us, our nonprofit, and will specifically go to funding habitat connectivity projects. So reserve your plate today. They're only available on our website right now, and I will put the direct link here in the chat. So thank you again, everybody, and thanks for joining us for this episode of Community Conservation.
Thank you.
Thank you.